ahead and do roll call. Jeff Hallgren.
Here.
Samantha McDavid.
Present.
Sarah Moses.
Present.
Victoria Newport. Here. Jeremy Olson.
Here.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Here.
Valerie.
Here. Shannon, can you hear me?
I can hear you, thank you.
Yep.
David Seymour.
Present.
Shannon, can you hear me? Here.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, next, we'll have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card or may send an email to the board president, sarah.moses@b428.org prior to the meeting. Members of the public located on the agenda. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not in order. We got several public comments. We have 7. And then I also got an email. So I'm just going to go ahead and read that email first. And it says, it's from Missy Hazushik. I lived in DeKalb from 2002 to 2019. I paid taxes during the 17-year period. I was also a member of the county board from 2012 to 2019. I tried many times to get some kind of information on how my tax, including tip dollars, were spent. There was and is something wrong at City Hall. I read the fiscal assessment and I have a few comments. Number 1, the entire document shows that the city of DeKalb was arbitrary and capricious in who got tip dollars and how much each entity received. It shows a total lack of any procedures or record keeping. I believe that each of the 9 taxing bodies should be made whole and that there should be serious oversight on how the city proceeds. We are talking about millions of dollars that have been misspent. Number 2, page 23, section 6.5.5 says in part, section 11-74.4-3 of the TIF Act stipulates, unless explicitly stated herein, the costs of construction of new privately owned buildings shall not be eligible redevelopment projects. Did Bemis, Cornerstone, and even the newest Pappas development, the source of Nick Cronauer's lawsuit, qualify? Number 3, page 25, section 6.5.2.2, TIF eligibility. We were not provided with a contemporaneous analysis establishing TIF eligibility of the Bemis incentive. It also says the information provided the information provided does not enable us to clearly appropriate expenses between renovation and the new construction, and we are accordingly unable to conclude that the Bemis development incurred $1.5 million in eligible expenses. Number 4, there's an additional question about the Bemis issue. The forgivable loan goes past the life of the TIF. Is this even legal? In the entire document, shows that the city of DeKalb was arbitrary and capricious in who got TIF dollars and how much each entity received. It shows the total lack of any procedure and record keeping. I believe that since only 85 items were in the scope of Ernst & Young's assessment, there are so many items found that are clearly wrong and possibly even criminal that further investigation needs to be done. In addition to my concerns, there needs to be a serious oversight since the most recent audit of 2018 and 2019 shows that the numbers don't add up. There is something wrong with City Hall. I believe that ultimately each of the 9 taxing bodies should be made whole and that there should be a serious oversight on how the city proceeds. Missy Hazushik, formerly of 529 Park Avenue. Next, we will have Mary Lynn Buckner from GCPA. The subject is remote learning.
Good evening. Yep, I'm using a teacher voice again. I'm Mary Lynn Buckner, co-president of the DeKalb Classroom Teachers Union, Teachers Association, excuse me. I have a prepared statement, and then we have a few representatives from different levels of the school that will go after me. Teachers are perceived through many lenses. When we bargain for a fair contract with reasonable working conditions and wages, we're greedy. When we try to protect children from harm, we're heroes. When folks learn that we teach algebra to 8th graders, we're extraordinarily patient. And now when we advocate for remote learning to ensure that all of our students remain healthy, some call us lazy. We are none of those. We are regular people who are passionate about the future, and the future is the children of our community. We believe in the power of a free, appropriate public education for all children. We believe that the seeds that we plant within each child will blossom. Sometimes we have the great joy of watching that metamorphosis during the school year, and other times we have to just imagine what endless possibilities those seeds develop into. Teaching children just happens to be our passion. We wish everything was normal. We wish we were going back to a normal school year with our students who we have been missing since March. We know that it is not best practice to have children at home instead of being at school. But these are not normal times, and wishing it to be feels like forcing a square peg into a round hole. Many of us have been carefully sheltering in place, only going out when necessary, and wearing a mask when we do so. Many of us have not seen loved ones because we could not live with ourselves if we unknowingly infected them. Some of us are having to make the difficult choice of either sending our child to school or our child being able to see grandma and grandpa. Our students are at the center of our daily lives at school. We want them to be happy, healthy, and successful. We want them to thrive and grow. There are too many unknowns with this virus to take our precious children's lives into some kind of an experiment by going back to school in person, even in the proposed hybrid model, because we want to force things to get back to normal. We can always make up for lost academic learning, but we can't bring back a life that has been lost to this virus.
Thank you. Next is Kim Posega. Remote learning is the topic.
Hello, my name is Kim Posega. I'm a proud parent and employee at District 428. And tonight I'm here as a DCTA member representing the elementary teachers. I'd like to start by saying thank you. I'm sure none of you imagined this scenario when you decided to run for the Board of Education. The decisions you are making are not easy. It's my hope that my comments and those of my colleagues help us all to see the best way forward for our children, our schools, and our community. In this moment, we are called to do hard things. Your job now may be the hardest. To take the information and make the best choices for all the children. Teachers sometimes get a bad rap for not wanting to change, for not wanting to try new things. It's not that we don't want to change. Oftentimes, our resistance to change is a result of our experience of working day after day in an environment with a high degree of variability. Every day in the classroom is different in monumental ways. With experience, we get good at responding to certain variables, all the while new ones are introduced. After teaching second grade for 17 years, I could anticipate many situations, and I had a bag of tricks that were usually successful, not always. When I moved to the older grades a few years ago, there was a learning curve on how to deal with situations that older kids found themselves in. I wasn't adept at handling many of the variables. However, I was confident that I could learn, rely on some of my previous knowledge and experience, but most importantly, I could look to my colleagues as models and for advice. In-person learning during a global pandemic means this is all new for everyone. There is no one to look to as a model. We will all have to figure it out as we go. And the stakes are high. We will make mistakes, and our students' health will be at risk. The new variables that the in-person plan presents tips the balance of our ability to keep the students safe. We work with variables every day. We know what we can handle, and we can handle a whole awful lot. But how do we help a student tie their shoes while maintaining social distancing? How will we supervise students washing hands in the bathroom while also being responsible for the line of children who need to social distance in the hallway? If we have 2 students in the bathroom, there could be 10 in the hallway, which means a line that is 60 feet long. These 2 scenarios happen frequently during the school day, and they present significant safety and supervision issues. And these are just 2 of the many scenarios we as teachers are staying up at night thinking. The hybrid model that is the current plan looks like it's a win-win. It gives everyone a little bit of what they want. I can see how that would appeal to you as you take into consideration all the stakeholders. The plan provides for socialization, but what kind of socialization? Pre-K teachers will be in full PPE, friends must be kept 6 feet apart, and there will be no sharing of toys. The plan provides for in-person instruction. Because of social distancing and safety precautions, that instruction will be substandard. No guided reading groups, no math manipulative, no one-on-one with the teacher at a desk. While the plan looks good on paper, and it may make sense on paper, the teachers are saying that there are too many risks. I'm asking that you take this plan as the basis for a school re-entry when COVID is more controlled and we are more prepared. Please consider starting the school year remotely for all students. That way, this great foundation can be ironed out and decisions can be made prudently, which will result in more fiscal responsibility. Our working conditions are the students' learning conditions. It's not just that 72 of us feel unsafe returning to work. 72% of us feel as though we are not able to provide a safe environment for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kelly Hamilton, discussing remote learning.
I'm Kelly Hamilton. I'm an instructional coach at both of them. Okay, I thought I was. Oh, okay. I am here representing the middle schools. This message is a compilation of the comments of a dozen middle school staff members. These are not my words, but I'm here to share these words with you. We believe that the hybrid schedule is not in the best interest of students. At secondary level, students will only be seeing a teacher once a week in person or 5 times per month per class. We question whether this minimal amount of contact time is worth the risk of all of our health and safety. In addition, we know that this hybrid schedule is not truly helping working families with only 2 half days in person learning, rather than the 5 days a week that working families are really asking. In anticipation of starting the year in a hybrid model, our staff has serious concerns about staffing levels for our most vulnerable population. Our SOL program is understaffed, which leaves fewer teachers to help our students who need the most adult support. Other special education programs are struggling to hire the necessary aides to provide our students with the support they need to be successful, and that assumes that no one gets sick once the school year begins. There is simply not enough time left before the start of the school year to be able to get staff adequately trained and informed about our plan. We are far from having a solid plan, and it is not fair to students or staff to rush going back with little time to prepare. The stress that this will cause will make everyone more vulnerable to both physical illness and psychological distress. A remote start will provide students, parents, and staff a structured and safe return to school. It will also give more time for current COVID numbers to decrease and allow teachers to spend the next few weeks creating a meaningful curriculum for remote learning. And students, if we did remote learning, would be able to see their teachers remotely every day rather than only a couple of times a week. Then, once remote learning has started, we can spend more time working together to develop a better hybrid schedule when we are ready. During this worsening, mysterious, and humbling pandemic, please do your ethical duty to protect our students, staff, and the entire community by choosing remote learning. If scientists, medical professionals, and our own administration cannot answer all of our questions and guarantee safety, we are not ready to open in-person schooling. Perhaps our funds could be used instead to improve remote learning and support our at-risk students during this pandemic. I understand the students need to learn and socialize, but it would be devastating to them if they, their family, friends, or teachers become ill because of in-person learning. We can always catch students up, but we can't bring them back. Think of your child's or your favorite teacher. Imagine because of your decision to do hybrid learning, they become deathly sick. Is it worth it? We urge you to reconsider going to remote learning to keep us all safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Steve Byers. Remote learning is the topic.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Steve Byers. I teach right now at DeKalb High School. I spent 5 years at Huntley Middle School. I have 2 kids this year who are Lincoln Lions. We're really excited. One is starting kindergarten. And I recently opened a business here in town called Byers Brewing Company. I'm here representing some of the high school staff, and I have just a few questions that I'd like to read to you. It takes more than a teacher in a classroom to keep our students safe. With groups of young people, they've been known to disregard teacher instructions from time to time. What is the clear procedure when a child refuses to wear a mask or follow safety protocols? And how will we be able to guarantee the safety of not only that student, but all the other students that we have? At the high school, our students would be moving around the building to go from class to class. We all know that they miss their friends dearly. How could we guarantee student safety in our hallways and in our common areas when they want to see each other, when they want to hug their friends? As teachers, we signed up to work with and keep our students safe from harm. How could any one of us live with ourselves if we were responsible for infecting one of our students, or possibly something worse? As trained professionals, we're capable of working with young people on their learning and their social and emotional needs. However, the social and emotional needs of our students at this time is likely far greater than we have ever experienced. What training will be available for teachers to help be prepared to meet those needs? What costs would you be willing to pay to get everyone back in the classroom? How many students or staff catching COVID-19 would be acceptable? As I said, I have a business in town, and my business right now is failing. It's absolutely failing due to the COVID situation. My family could end up homeless from that, but I still wouldn't sacrifice a single one of my customers so that I could succeed. Our staff have a large amount of other questions before we feel safe returning to our building. That is why we would prefer to start the year remotely until we can guarantee staff and student safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Abby Asta, and the topic is remote learning.
Good evening, can you hear me okay? I'm here this evening to share my own personal experience with the COVID-19 virus. With doctor guidance, I went to the ER at Kish Hospital on April 2nd, after being home ill for over a week. Within that week at home, my symptoms grew from bad to worse to unbearable. I was basically bedridden, lethargic. I couldn't take a full breath, nauseous, intense body aches, and not able to eat or even drink. When I arrived at the ER, I could not even make it to the COVID testing tent without a wheelchair needing to be rushed out to me. I was that weak. I did not realize that at the point my weakness was due to a sizable deficiency of oxygen through my body. I was immediately put on high flow oxygen. My blood was taken. I had a flu swab, a COVID test, and then I sat in my room alone. I physically felt miserable, but I was scared more than anything. I was scared because I was alone and no one was coming in to check on me, to talk to me, or tell me anything. I had been moved to a different room in the ER that had pressurized air because I needed that support on top of the high flow oxygen. Talk about adding to my anxiety. In the new room, I had chest x-rays and more blood drawn. Again, nothing was told to me, and then I sat alone for another hour. Finally, after 4 hours in the ER, a doctor came and talked to me through a window and called me on a telephone in my room. He didn't even enter the room. He explained that I had widespread pneumonia caused by the COVID-19 virus. He was going to admit me because I needed respiratory therapy to support the decrease in my oxygen. That was the point where I called my husband because he could only drop me off at the ER. Although I had no desire to do so, I was not allowed to eat for 3 to 4 days due to the possibility of needing to be intubated. My time in the hospital was an experience that I would not want anyone to have. My nurse spoke with me through a phone if any of my 5 alarms that were attached to me went off, or if my oxygen level dipped lower on the remote monitoring system that they were using. Most of my time I was alone, feeling unexplainably horrible, scared, and filled with anxiety. I feel those emotions are the most important things to share more than my medical symptoms I experienced. I was released after 9 days because my symptoms had gotten better. My energy was returning and I could eat little bits of food. I did need to be on oxygen for an additional 3 weeks at my home after being released. I can still remember the first time, 5 weeks post-testing positive, 6 weeks since the first symptom occurred, that I was able to go outside of my house and take a walk to the house next door and back, but yet still needing the oxygen support. Fast forward roughly 4.5 months. I want to repeat that, 4.5 months. I'm still dealing with residual health issues from the COVID-19 virus. I'm thankful that I have amazing doctors that keep a close watch on me, but I am tired of needing lab work every 2 to 3 weeks and monthly chest x-rays to check on my status of my lungs because they don't know what the long-term effects are. I never imagined this would be my life after contracting a virus. My experience shows that COVID-19 is not a simple 14-day virus. This is something that our community and stakeholders need to take seriously when thinking about returning to in-person instruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sean LaPlante from DCTA Remote Learning as the topic.
Hello. Hello, my name is Sean LaPlante. It's my 20th year in the district and co-president of the DCTA. I had a prepared statement that I was going to read to you, and you know, instead I just felt like I'd like to just talk to you for a few minutes. I think it would be better use of my time. We just recently polled our DCTA again and asked them what do they prefer. And 80% said that it's moved to 80%. July 4th was the first time we polled them, and they said 50-50 preferred. It was a split, 50-50 versus in-person learning. July 20th, we again polled them, and that's what I shared with you the last time. And we had 72% of our members at that point, after even seeing the plan, prefer remote learning. Now we're up to 80%. Our comfort level of how safe teachers feel is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least safe, 10 being the most, was about 3.75. And the mode, the number that occurred the most was a 1. We had 86 members that said that's how they felt that unsafe returning back into the class. We asked teachers to give us their questions and concerns. We had approximately 1,000 questions and concerns. Some of them were redundant, but over and over we heard those. We even thought about sending one person from each building to read every single question and concern that we have tonight. It would have gone on for 45 minutes, an hour. I don't know how long, but the point is we tried to give a little glimpse into that by sending a representative from each level up there. The short of it is the time's too short to answer and solve every question and concern at this point. We got to start to look and shift our focus away, and all of us together as a community, school board, administration, teachers, assistants, custodial staff, work together in order to come up with a good remote plan that keeps us all safe as a community. We can learn from other districts that are taking this risk, taking this unnecessary risk over the next few weeks. See what they did well, see what they didn't do well, and go from there. We can do this. We can learn from other districts that want to take the risk. All the while, we can keep our community safe. So with that, DCTA urges you to look at a remote plan. We can come back and utilize the plan that we worked really, really hard to put in place. And when it's ready, and when we're all ready, then we can do that and keep our staff, our students, and our families safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean. And then next and last is Brett Mcintosh, and the topic is remote learning.
Good evening. My name is Brett Mcintosh. I am here as a parent of 2 children who attend DeKalb schools. I am here on their behalf and on my wife's. This board faces tough choices in an unprecedented time, and my wife and I acknowledge the hard work put in by all district staff who have helped map out a return to in-person learning. To be clear, we want our children going to school. We want our children to return to some semblance of normalcy. We want our children engaging socially with their friends, and we want our children engaging with their teachers. However, now is not the time. Our 2 oldest children attend college. Our oldest son will be remote learning at NIU. Our oldest daughter will be remote learning at Elgin Community College. My wife works at Kishwaukee Community College, where all students will be remote learning. I attend NIU as a graduate student, and I will be remote learning. The only 2 in our family whose schools at this point in time are not fully remote learning are our 8th grader and our 5th grader, our littlest ones. If the decision is made to move forward with in-person learning, despite the district's best efforts to ensure safety, that decision will be putting teachers, support staff, school administrators, and most importantly, children at the front lines of this pandemic. Please be clear, this virus wants our schools open. Our schools are a potent avenue for spreading. Lastly, our biggest fear is that at times politics creep into this decision of opening schools or not, whether they be the politics of the right or the left. This is a decision that needs to be made with the best interests of children, school staff, and the public health of the community at large at the forefront. We are starting to see in our community bars that are filling, restaurants that are filling, graduation parties and other community events where health and safety practices are not being adhered to, allowing further avenues of spreading to take place. Politics, again, must not play a part in this decision. My children and all of our children in this district are not pawns in what has become a politically motivated decision to open schools or not. We encourage you to set a precedent of safety first for our future DeKalb school boards to follow in the event this happens in the future, and make the decision to go with remote learning for at a minimum the first quarter of the 2021 school year. We agree that this might not be the popular choice, but it is the best choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have board correspondence. Does anyone have anything to share? Next, we'll move forward to the consent agenda. And we have items A to J. And it is the recommendation that the Board of Education approve items A to J for the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Roll call?
May I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
In regards to the fundraiser, will that continue if we are remote learning?
I didn't hear that question.
I said, in regards to the athletic department fundraiser, will it, I just didn't know if that would continue if we are remote learning.
I don't have an exact answer, but I think the answer would be.
Okay. That's my only.
Okay. Anyone else with a question? Okay, roll call?
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren.
Yes.
Yes.
Luther Val.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
Can you guys hear me? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we heard you, Val. Okay, so next is the superintendent's report and presentations. The first is informational item. This is Ray and Associates presentation on our superintendent search for District 428.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have Robert Hammond here from Ray and Associates, who we've met at a prior board meeting, and he's here to talk about our next steps for the superintendent search.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have a lot of important decisions to make, and this is going to be another important decision that you're going to be faced with in the coming months. Sarah is handing out a packet of information that I'm going to go through in no particular order. I will try to keep it brief, but we want to conclude this evening with some direct. Jeff, when Jeff gets things handed out, we will move forward. Oh, okay, great. That is, if I can get it out, okay.
Thank you.
I call your attention to the left side of the packet, and this is somewhat for information purposes. What you have are some samples of some flyers, and I would call your attention to the last flyer, which is one that we did at Indian Prairie. This is important. Sarah is compiling the information needed to comprise the flyer, and that should be done shortly. And when that is completed, then you as a board will be able to look at this and pass judgment on it. However, I would point out there are a couple of things that need to be done before this flyer is completed. One is your salary. You need as a board to make a determination of a salary that you are going to think about offering to a prospective candidate. I would call your attention to that last page. We will put a statement in there that says the salary would be in the range of XYZ dollars. And then we hedge our bets by saying that the final salary for the successful candidate will be negotiated and determined by experience, qualifications, and et cetera, and et cetera. So that gives you an opportunity. But it's very important to put a dollar amount in there for candidates to look at. The second thing that needs to be done shortly is the development of the profile, and we will put that in there as to what you as a Board of Education is looking for. And I'll come back to that development of that profile. So this is a sample of the flyer. Sarah is working very hard at gathering the information, and we will compile a draft. Now, regarding the salary, we have comparables. Comparables from Luda. She will be disseminating that information to the board members. I would ask Madam President, once that information is out there, to call, do a call survey of your fellow board members to see if there is unanimity on a particular salary. We're trying to hold as many things, get as many things done without having to have a lot of board meetings. So if that could be done in the next few days or whatever, I think that would be an asset and help us to move along. Okay. The second thing that's in your board packet is suggested search advertising. And this, I would like to get a consensus this evening. What you have are some recommendations. One is, and I'll tell you the ones that I would recommend. First is the AASA, which is the job bulletin and website. That would cost you $409. The second one that I would recommend is the Education Week newspaper. Everybody gets that nationally, and that would be another $395. I would also suggest that we contact NABSE and post that for 30 days. That would be an initial expense. My math is correct. We're running about $1,000 or $1,100 on those, but those are all three very good avenues to advertise. Moving on down the list, recommend executives only website. We would need a salary amount to put in there. That's free. Would recommend the National Association of School Superintendents. That is a free job listing. Then Ray and Associates, we will put this immediately on our website, and we get almost hundreds of contacts almost on a daily basis, and that will go nationwide. That's free. Also, the Illinois School Boards Association, this is something that Sarah can post. That's free. Would also recommend that the IASA, which is something that in-house here can be posted. That's free. And then finally, the Illinois Association School Business Officials, ASBO. That is free. Also, we would be contacting the ROE to help disseminate any advertising that she might do. That's our suggestions and our recommendations to you as a board. What do you think?
Do we have a mechanism by which board member Valerie Pena-Hernandez can get this information?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Is there a mechanism that we can use to get this information to the missing board member?
Yes, we have a packet for her. It's right there.
May I ask why it says that Education Week newspaper and website is included in our base fee, but it's listed also separately?
Which one is that again?
Under Education Week newspaper and website, it says $395. Job listing will run on Ed Week.
That's free.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I misunderstood.
That's it. That was included in our base bid.
Thank you.
I guess I would just kind of like a nod of heads that we can proceed with this and get this all lined up.
So you're just looking for consensus to move. You're looking for consensus to move forward with advertising.
Yes, I would like that.
Does anyone else have questions? Do we have a consensus to move forward with this advertising? No. Yeah. Did you have a question? And then I asked for consensus.
You have my. I approve to move forward, but I also want to ask a question.
Okay.
The question is, Bob. The question is, you give us some places that you're going to be using for advertising. As far as other means to go forward, Did you have? Am I missing something else here? Is it just you're just going to be putting these things in various places?
I think that the items that we have listed here will be very comprehensive. They'll be nationwide, and it'll also be comprehensive in the state of Illinois.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have consensus to go ahead and move forward with advertising?
Yes.
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 All right.
Okay, continuing on, I believe in your board packet is for our FY only, as far as information is concerned.
But yes, I have a question. I have.
Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Val.
Can you all?
I believe your board packet is.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to do both, trying to hear and then speak into Google Meet, so it's not. There's a big delay apparently. I do have a question in terms of the salary. Why is it not advisable though? Granted, we're going to be looking nationwide. Why can we not just include market competitive? As we know, the salary will really vary based on experience and education. So I guess that's the question that I have for you to answer publicly.
That is a board's choice. I will tell you that there are boards who will put out there in their flyers that the salary will be originally competitive or whatever. However, candidates really like to see a dollar figure out there because that could prohibit some people from applying for the position. But again, that is you as a board, you can make that determination. But I will tell you that there will come a time where you're going to have to address that salary issue specifically in the next couple of months or whatever. But if the board's choice is in the flyer to put regionally competitive with fringe benefits, that's your choice.
I would think that the previous superintendent salary was public information, pretty easily accessible by everybody looking for the job. So I don't think it's really top secret anymore.
So I mean, anybody, saying, Jeremy, not to include it, or are you saying to include it?
No, I would say there's still a number out because they're going to look it up anyway if they're smart. And we don't want them if they're not.
Right.
I like that idea, actually. And just looking at the 3 flyers that you gave us, to be frank, there's actually a huge discrepancy in numbers between the 3. So I think getting our baseline in there because.
Well, you really don't want to pick a specific salary number and then feel that you are stuck with that particular salary depending upon who the candidate is. You want to leave the board some flexibility in either going higher or even lower as such. But what I would suggest you as a board do is allow Sarah to get that information to you so you can see the ranges. And then as your president gets on the phone and talks to you and takes a survey, she can make a determination that it's the board's wishes to put competitiveness, regionally competitive, or as a board, you're comfortable in putting a dollar figure in there, which could be a range up or down. Is that okay, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you.
Valerie, can you hear us okay? Right. I just want to make sure she can hear what's being said. 30 seconds is a long time. Yeah, good. So I have a question. So given the discussion we just had, you had on that one flyer, you had 260. Is that like a 30 down from where you go at the most, or is that? I mean, how did you come up with 260 on that particular figure?
To be real honest with you, since I wasn't necessarily involved in that search, I cannot tell you how they arrived at that dollar figure. It may have been what they felt the market would be, or
Right.
that may be what the previous superintendent was close making.
Okay.
I really have no idea how that board
Right. I
determined
mean,
it.
it's kind of you don't want to put the absolute highest figure. You don't want to put
No.
Jeff, no, it's hard to hear you all, and now I see the frustration from people on Google Meets. If you're not speaking and projecting onto the mic, I can't hear you. So people on Google Meets, we can't see you or hear you. We have to have YouTube and Google Meets in order to formulate one meeting. So for me, it's becoming impossible to partake, and I feel really bad, but it's hard. It's hard to hear you if you're not directly speaking into that mic as loud as you can.
Okay.
Jeff, the one that you're referring to is the fourth largest school district in Illinois, serving 27, almost 28,000 students. So 260,000 maybe that's just the going rate for a superintendent of a district that large.
I would suggest that you all wait until you get the salary comparables. Don't hit the panic button yet. Wait till you get that information, and they'll give you hopefully a comfortable feeling of where you might want to go. So wait till you have that information available.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, proceeding. In your packet are it's FYI, these are the 33 qualities desired for a superintendent. This is for your information. This is what's going to be used as the survey, the monkey survey that will go out to anybody. Sarah is working very closely with our people, and we will have a beginning date and an ending date, and whatever the results are on this survey will be shared with you as a board as you go forward to determine the profile. I'm just sharing this with you so you have some information and an understanding of what's going to go out in that survey. And I think we will put that in on your website. We will also put that on any newsletters and get that communicated out to the general public in Cortland, Malta, and throughout DeKalb. Okay. Okay. The next thing that I want to go through is the suggested process and timeline. And I will tell you as I stand here tonight, that timeline is antiquated already, considering the things that are happening. This timeline and the events that are going to occur on this is based upon in-person meetings with social distancing and masks and everything else. That all may change by tomorrow morning. It may change in a week or a month, but we're going to go ahead and process this. Before I get into this timeline, I want to go back and talk to you regarding the use of stakeholders and constituents in the search process. Suggest that you have a group or various groups of stakeholders that will help provide information and input into the desirability of the qualities that you're looking for a superintendent. For example, highly suggest that you have a group made up of faculty and staff members. We will work with Sarah, who will work with the union representatives to have a group that will be representative of not only the elementary, middle school, and high school, of faculty members and staff members. but also recommend a group of representing administrators and district office. And then I would recommend that you have a group of parents, PTO people, or booster people. Sarah would work through the principals in the building since they know the parents very well, and we can get a random sampling of individuals to form that. And then finally, the community group. I highly suggest that you have a community group and representatives from Cortland, DeKalb, Malta. Now, as far as the size of these groups, we really do not want a cast of 1,000. We'd like to keep them 12, 15, or even under 20 if we can, because we will be meeting, like what we're meeting now to solicit their input. To select your community people, I would suggest that every board member make a recommendation of 2 or 3 community people that they would like to see on that community group. That's your homework assignment, one of your homework assignments, and you can forward that to Sarah. I am sure there will probably be some overlapping, but we will try to get that put together. And as a board, you will know who makes up those community groups. Now, when we meet with all of your constituents and your stakeholders, we will inform them that we will, when we get to the end and to the interview process, that we would be soliciting people from these stakeholder groups to be part of an interview process. So not only will they give input at the beginning, but a sampling of those people will be available for the interview process once we get into that stage. So any questions on that? 2 or 3 names. You can go from the chamber, you can go from City Hall to businessmen to whoever. Now remember that everybody in the community, if they so choose to desire, can fill out that online survey also. So, everybody has an opportunity to say what they would like to say. Okay? I'm moving along fast. All right, take a look at the suggested timeline. We're in the month of August. We're meeting here tonight. I do have scheduled all of the board members for interviews except one, and that will be done very shortly. We will immediately, tomorrow, notify all of our associates nationwide of the vacancy, and then we will begin the process of developing the list of the constituents and the stakeholders for input meetings. That says an input meeting on September the 2nd, that probably will not occur. What we will do is once we have the list of names, we will send an invitation out. Sarah will send an invitation out that Mr. Hallgren, you have been invited to participate in this process, and that process will begin at 7 a.m. on some day, on some morning, or whatever, something of that nature. Please RSVP back to us that you are willing to participate. So we're going to do that as soon as possible. You can see the survey is there. Meeting with the constituents and the stakeholder groups, we'll begin that as soon as possible. Now, you have a board meeting coming up. I got to look at my calendar here, on the 1st, right, of September? The 1st and the 15th? Fine, correct. And we'll try to get all of that going because it's important to get that information to them so that you as a board will be able to look over that information, and you will also be able to look over the draft of that profile. Hopefully we can get that done on the 15th of September. Okay? Where it says 9/8, well, that's not going to happen because we just don't have the time to sandwich everything in. So that will probably be September the 15th. I will get a revised calendar out, timeline out in the next day or so, and Sarah will make sure that it's distributed to all the board members. Then towards the end of October, I would say that this timeline as presented is very aggressive in trying to get a selection done in a few number of weeks. Sometimes it can be done in 4 weeks. Sometimes it can take 8 weeks or whatever, or 10 weeks to go through the process in order to get good quality candidates. But we will meet at the end of October. We will present with you the questions that you as a board would be using in an interview process, and then we will begin to schedule the interview process. Let's just say, for the argument of math, let's just say you got 20 applicants. That will be narrowed down to 10, and you as a board will go through those, and we'll narrow that down to, let's say, 3 or 4. And then we will establish an interview process. At that first interview process, we're going to do 2 things. One, you as a board will interview the candidate, and we will have questions for you to ask that candidate. And also at that same time, the group from all of your stakeholders will have an opportunity to meet and interview the candidates. We do not ask the stakeholders to rank these candidates. We ask them to give us what they feel are the strengths and the weaknesses of the candidates. You as a board will get that input from those constituents. After that interview process, as a board, you will establish a second interview, and that second interview will be bringing a candidate back. And at that second interview, more than likely, it's probably be a half a day to 3/4 of a day. That candidate can take a tour of the community, take a tour of your schools, and we'll meet with you in a social situation. Again, provided that you can have social situations at that point in time, which is always nice to have a dinner. And then after that, and if you're going to interview 2 or 3 finalists that way, that's about 2 or 3 evenings and days to go through. And then after that, you as a board begin to make your deliberation. Now, I will throw this out. A lot of boards do not do this. Some boards do. It is your choice. Some boards choose to make a site visit. The only caveat I have is if we have someone from Hawaii that's there, I want to go with you for a site visit to Hawaii, okay? But that's another option. A lot of boards feel comfortable about checking out the individual's hometown, their schools. You can learn a lot by walking up and down Main Street and going into the coffee shop and saying, I'm thinking about moving into XYZ city. Tell me about your schools. And you can learn a lot. So that's an option for you. Realistically, we would like to have this thing wrapped up by the end of November or whatever. I have asked Sarah to contact your legal counsel to have at least on hand a model generic contract, and which will probably be very similar to the contracts that you've used before, but it's nice to have one in hand and available to look at. I know I've gone through this rather quickly. I hope that I've not totally confused you, but it is a process, and it's going to take time, and your involvement is going to be very heavy. And I guess questions.
So our next steps are to meet with you individually over the next couple days.
What's that again?
I said our next steps are to meet with you individually over the next couple days.
Yes, I have 6 of you scheduled tomorrow, Friday, and Monday, and I have 1 more to schedule.
Okay, good.
And
okay.
we'll get that done. The thing that you need to do is think about salaries. And then you need to think about who you would like to have on the community stakeholders group.
Okay.
And get that to Sarah, and she'll be working with staff to get representatives from all your unions and your administrators, and we'll see how many groups we end up with, and we'll try to. It'll be a long day, but you won't necessarily be involved in this, but we'll try to get all the groups done in one day.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
So, Bob, the question is, I'm going to be meeting with you on Friday, and you said there are 6 others, or that 5 others are going to be meeting as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to be meeting with you on Friday. Is there something that I should do in preparation for that meeting on Friday?
No.
Okay.
Just show up, and we'll have a conversation, and probably, depends upon, Jeff, how long you want to talk, probably 40 minutes, 50 minutes at the most.
Okay.
And I do have specific questions that I'm going to ask you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
Well, thank you for your time and your consideration. And our contact person with the district is Sarah, and she's going to be doing a yeoman's job on a lot of things. And then we will communicate to your board president, who will then communicate out. As we go through the process, we will give you some updates on what's going on and where we're at. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. You can get a hold of me. Sarah has my phone number or whatever, and I'm not very far away. I can be someplace in 15 minutes. So I really appreciate this time. I appreciate you selecting Ray and Associates, and our job is to give you the best quality candidates that you can to make a selection.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next, we have approved the tentative budget and set public hearing for September 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Ms. Cynthia Carpenter.
Oh. I don't know if you have to do a motion since this is an approval item.
Yeah, we'll do. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And then you go.
Yep, I'm up.
Okay.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and. So last board meeting, I had given you a budget update, and so now we're at that point where we have to approve our tentative budget for our fiscal year 2021, which actually has already started. It started on July 1st. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So just briefly, I'm going to go through the timeline again. Today, August 4th, is where we will approve the tentative budget and also set our budget hearing date, which will be September 15th. We have to put this budget on public display for 30 days, so we post in the newspaper that information and have it available to the public. It is on display again for 30 days, and then at September 15th, we'll have a public hearing where the budget will get adopted. So next slide. Now, a budget, it seems pretty obvious, but it is an estimate. It's not it's not going to be what's going to happen. We know actuals are always different than a budget, but it is a financial plan, and plans can change, and I'll be very honest with you. This year, it will change. There's a lot going on in terms of the budget and what we're looking at in COVID-19, and so we will definitely see some changes, but we do the best we can with the information that we have at the moment. And we use it as a tool for projections and for planning and to monitor our spending on an annual basis. And we also estimate revenues that are going to be received as well as expenditures to be spent. So pretty simple. Next slide. So when we do our budget and also our financial statements, we do them on a modified accrual basis. And just really simply what that means is that we record the revenue when it is received and expenses when they're paid. But also what we do is we account for revenues that we receive over the next 60 days. So in July and August, if there's any revenues that should be allocated in the previous fiscal year, we make that adjustment.
An example of that would be state revenues that we should have received by the end of the fiscal year, but may not receive them until July or August. Also, a big piece of our budget for modified accrual basis is deferred property tax revenue. We receive our property tax revenue, a big chunk of it, about 50% of it, in May and June, but we allocate that revenue to the next fiscal year, even though we've already received it. So that's really why we call it a modified accrual basis. And we also record expenses paid out 60 days if they pertain to the previous fiscal year. And a big example of that would be like teacher salaries. We paid them over the summer, but we're paying them for contract work that they've already performed for the previous fiscal year. Next slide. So just briefly, in terms of our state payments, our categorical and grant payments that we receive from the state, as of July 30th, we're still waiting for about 1.4 million that they still owe us in the previous fiscal year. Last year, that was about 1.3 million, so similarly to what we were waiting for last year. Last year, we received the majority of those funds in August. This year, I just don't really know when we will receive those funds based on everything that's going on. So, but it's something that we do monitor. And in terms of our evidence-based funding, we did receive 100% of our Ebf funding for fiscal 1920, so that's money that's basically in the bank. And for the 2021 school year, that funding will be flat due to COVID-19, so we're not going to be seeing any additional tiered funding like we have had in the last few years. So next slide, please. And again, I showed this last time in our previous presentation when we were looking at the budget update, but really it just briefly shows you where we started in terms of our evidence-based funding and how we have been receiving additional funding from the Tier 1 allocation, about $2.9 million a year, which has really helped our district to maintain our fund balance and for us to hire additional staff and cover some expenses. Although now for 2021, we will have flat funding, which was actually good news because we were looking at a lot of different scenarios early on when COVID-19 hit. And again, this evidence-based funding does not include the property tax relief grant of $4.7 million. We got that grant last year in fiscal 20. We used that to abate bond and interest payments when we did our bond restructuring. Those funds get put into our evidence-based funding formula, but we're using those again for our 2020 tax levy to abate bond and interest. So it's not included here because it's not really part of our operating funds at the moment, because we will be using those to pay interest, bond and interest. So next slide. So here's a overall tentative budget for all of our revenues by each of our funds. Our education, operations and maintenance, debt service. I won't go through every single fund, but it really just shows you the different sources of funds that we have. We have local sources, which are primarily our property taxes, student fees, those types of things. State sources, largest portion of that is our evidence-based funding. And then federal sources, which is our title grants. And also part of that is the CARES Act grant that we just received to help us with some COVID-19 expenses. Next slide. Oh, that didn't turn out too well. So based on, it looked better before, must be in Google Slides. So we have about an operating fund revenue of about $101 million, and operating funds are our education, tort, O&M, transportation, IMRF, which is municipal retirement, and working cash. You can see the primary source of our funds come from local sources, which is primarily property taxes. State sources is about 37%, and then federal sources is about 7%, is what we're projecting for fiscal 2021. So next slide. Now we'll look at our expenditures, and again, we have this broken out by the various funds of the district. And objects is what they call it, which are salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies and materials, capital outlay, and other, and the biggest part of that is tuition that we pay for outplacements. So you can see for each of the funds, we have these various expenses that we're projecting for 2021. Next slide. Again, that does not look good, but you can pretty much see the majority of our expenses are on our salaries and benefits, which is typical for school districts. Then we also have purchase services, which is basically our transportation, food service, legal bills, those, basically all those types of expenditures. And we have tuition, material supplies, and capital outlay. So it kind of gives you an idea of where we spend our dollars. Pretty similar to what we do on a year-to-year basis. Next slide. So here's a summary of our tentative budget. And we have it broken out by fund, by revenue and expenditures, and if there's a surplus or deficit for a specific year or for that time period, and then operating funds on the top, and then our other funds, which are debt service, capital projects, and life safety. On the bottom, those are not our day-to-day funds like our operating funds. So we really do focus on those operating funds. So as what we're projecting for 2021 is a surplus of about $1 million. But we're also going to be transferring some funds from our working cash to the debt service fund, which is part of the property tax abatement that we will do because we received the property tax relief grant. So that's at $313,000. So after that adjustment, we're looking at a surplus of about $700,000 and an estimated operating fund balance of about $38 million, which puts us at a 38% approximately fund balance to expenditures, which is well within our policy of 20 to 30% of fund balance. And again, I just noted here the information regarding the working cash transfer in order to take care of that property tax abatement for the 2020 levy. Next slide. So here's just a brief history, and this is similar to the slide I had last time that shows us what our revenue and expenses on an operating fund was from the 2013 period up through our 2021 projected budget. And then you can see the red line that shows where our fund balance was in 2013 of about $26.6 million. And now we're at about $38.3 million. And also in our budget for 2020, we have, you can see the $10,313,000 transfer that we did, which was part of our bond restructuring. And that was done purposefully. We used those working cash funds to pay down principal on our bonds when we restructured. Okay, next slide. So just briefly, here are some budget considerations. Again, like I mentioned, COVID-19, additional expenditures and or revenue. There is stimulus out there that the federal government is looking at that we may see additional funds for that. We have our CARES Act grant, which is about $1.6 million, which is included in the budget on the revenue side as well as the expenditure side. We always have to look at state budget considerations and the continued support of our evidence-based funding model, even though this year is flat. Kind of hard to tell where we're going to be in future years at this point. State still owes us that $1.4 million, and always in the future wondering what's going to happen with property tax freezes, something they've talked about for many years, but still has not been really resolved at the state level, as well as any shifting of TRS pension obligations to the district. And that is it. If there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
It seems that you are making the assumption, or this is kind of a chicken and egg sort of situation. In other words, the assumption is that we are going to, that we would have a freeze on that, like we have done for the last 2 years. It seems that is, are you making that assumption on this budget?
Get the property tax freeze?
Yes.
No. No.
Okay, so you're making the assumption that we are not going to freeze that.
Right. And basically the property tax freeze would really affect our next year's budget, our 21-22, because our property taxes for this year are pretty well set.
That's done.
That's based on our 2019 levy.
The freeze that we already instituted affects this. Is that correct? I mean,
you mean the abatements? The bond and, yes. Yeah, the bond and interest abatements do. The freeze is something completely different from the bond and interest abatement.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to be clear, we didn't freeze any property taxes. We only abated on the bond and interest.
Right. Right.
Right.
So the percent that we can levy has still gone up.
Right. That's for our operating levy, yes, because we abated bond and interest, which is after you calculate your operating tax levy. But it still affects our total tax rate and kept it flat.
Sorry, I didn't ask the question correctly.
Oh, no, that's fine.
But you answered it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cynthia? Okay. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call. Is recommended action that the Board of Education approve. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the tentative budget as presented and set a public hearing for September 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Roll call.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
You might try that again and
Yes.
talk louder.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Okay, next is old business and action items. Subject is the reopening of school year 2021 plan update. And Superintendent.
Yes.
Making a decision about our reentry plan is clearly a challenge for everyone. We've had a lot of feedback from staff, community members, parents, and even students. Almost all of the feedback we received has been to pause on the student portion of our reentry program. We need to keep the overall safety and health of our students and staff our primary focus, and the board can then now provide us feedback and direction on our next step.
Thank you. So do we have any questions or comments to start with? Many members? Or I can start. Go ahead.
I have a
Jeff?
comment. May I? So I obviously heard the input from teachers and from the community.
I do.
Tonight.
I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Say again. Okay. Continuing, I heard that and duly noted. Your safety is our concern. Certainly, the safety of the safety of our teachers is my concern. I am a teacher myself, and I teach at Elgin Community College. And we are not going back this semester. We are teaching remotely. The children that I teach are further along. They are freshmen and sophomores in college, and I have been teaching them this summer, and I also taught last semester when we went out for COVID. I feel that remote is a very, very poor substitute for teaching face to face. And I don't teach third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, but I understand. I understand it. I've been involved with that closely with others. And I feel very strongly that remote teaching, online is not going to reach our most disadvantaged children. And so I definitely understand that our teachers feel that their safety is incredibly important. It's important to me, but throughout the community, we have had people back at work. What they call essential services have been at work throughout this virus. And I feel that teachers are essential to the community. And so I feel like we have to give serious consideration to the health and welfare of both students and teachers and staff. They certainly aren't to be ignored. We have lots of other people besides teachers that are going to be involved in the classroom. I mean, the classroom environment, the general classroom environment. But I feel very strongly that we are essential services. We have to figure out a way to deliver teaching to our students. And teaching can only be done face-to-face with certain student groups, especially our most disadvantaged students. Our very disadvantaged students absolutely cry out for our teachers to be with them, teaching them. And anything other than that is not acceptable, in my opinion. We are leaving those people behind when we teach them remotely. And we absolutely left them behind in this last go-round. We absolutely left them behind, and I feel like we can't do that again. So it is my passion. Teaching is my passion, and I feel very, 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 very strongly that we need to get in front of those students, especially our most disadvantaged students. We need to be in front of them. And anything other than that is a poor, poor substitute. Your health and welfare, you that have come and spoken, to me, it is very, very important. But you are essential services. The people in the right just down the street in the fire department, the people, the police, people in the grocery store, they've been working this entire time. They have worked out the concept of how to keep them safe. We can do that. And it's essential that we do that. So that's just my thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to let Val go ahead and speak, so we're just going to wait a couple seconds. Val, you can go ahead.
If I could, I've got Val on the phone. We were going to try to do this through a speakerphone because of the delay.
Go
Would
ahead.
that be all right?
Yep. No problem.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, Jeff, you were talking and I interrupted you. It was not on purpose. There's a lag Ben says about 30 seconds, but it felt more like a minute. So I'm sorry you were in the midst of talking, and I apologize that I was like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm talking while he's talking. So I apologize for that. So having to use YouTube to see you guys and hear, and then use Google Meets to talk has been a great challenge. So I do apologize for that. First and foremost, I know that this is the topic that most teachers are coming in to hear and discuss. And I do want to say I do want to thank all of the teachers and the Teacher Association for coming and sharing and voicing their concerns. I also would like to personally thank Mrs. Aska, because I do believe that sharing your story is extremely powerful. Educators, are like Jeff said, essential workers. But by no means does that mean that we should be, putting lives at risk for a job that entails much more than just sitting in a classroom, right? So I think that this is the frustrating part for all of us as board members and difficult tasks. If we can't guarantee, the safety of our students, and our teachers, and our staff, then it's really hard for us to safely and securely say that we feel comfortable with in-person or any hybrid model. So that honestly is my biggest concern. And after reading and after asking questions about testing locally, we don't have the testing, capacity that we need, right, to ensure that when we do have an outbreak or when we do have situations, that we will be able to, contain the situation in an effective manner. So that's one situation. The second one is that most districts around us, just a few hours ago, CPS has announced they will be moving to remote only. A lot of neighboring districts will be moving to remote or have already moved to remote. So, in the absence of having the testing capacity and also knowing that the workforce will be something that we will be working with that will be less potentially, we just can't in good conscience feel comfortable saying let's reopen schools, right? At least I'm speaking for me. So one of the biggest things that I would say is for us as board members to consider, moving to remote in the time being until we have more information and until we have more testing available to be able to contain a situation of an outbreak. I do want to mention one thing. As teachers, I know that we're constantly, and I'm talking as an educator / board member, as teachers, we're constantly we're constantly compared to grocery store workers or, people in retail or people in, restaurants, whatnot. But honestly, I guess restaurants would be the most comparable one. But we're sitting in a classroom with children, and we know that we know that we're going to be sitting in a classroom with kids who are going to be coming to school at times asymptomatic or potentially sick. So we know as educators, we constantly stay sick because of these measures that parents sometimes just don't have the means to be able to stay home. So that's a consideration, I guess, that's different from other places where people are not necessarily next to these people and there's enough space to really space out. The classrooms are very confined and very difficult for us to really safely distance from children who by nature come up to you and want to be with you and want to congregate and want to be close to each other. So that's a big problem. And I think it's important for us to consider that. And in short, what I'm trying to say is I think that we are learning from our colleagues around us. They are moving to remote. That's not saying it's permanent by any means, but let's do so when we can safely do it and know for a fact that we will do it in the most safest way possible, while ensuring that we're able to take care of all students, all staff, and not risking a single life. Because if there's one thing that keeps me up at night, and I say this, and I'm eager to get back in the classroom, but I also know my limitations, right? One thing that keeps me up at night is if we lose one child, if we lose one staff member because of COVID, we as a board will have to face that, and we will have to be the ones to look at people and say, you know what, we made the wrong decision. So why not reflect now before we're in that situation? And I say this, to my fellow board members. So I'm all for remote, and that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Val. You want to say anything, Samantha, David, Victoria?
I've got a few questions that I'd like to present, if possible. We've heard from representatives from each level of education. I'm wondering, though, is there a specific cry, so to speak, for our educators who work with special needs population? Do they feel the same way as the representatives that have come before us today? So when the elementary school teachers speak, when the middle school teachers speak, when the high school teachers and their representatives speak, do they speak on behalf of those special education teachers for that population that really, we believe, needs that type of instruction, that face-to-face instruction? So if somebody can speak to that, I'd really appreciate it.
It's a very good question. One thing that has been really articulated to us is that when we started to say that some of our specialized programs were going to be there full day, they were the first to really push back and tell us they're not comfortable with that. So, and also, I had one particular, I can't speak for every single person, but I can say that I had several of them have the exact same question, is like, what happens if we do go remote? Are we going to be left behind and have to be expected to teach in class at the same time? And they were really concerned about that. I know one teacher in particular I just met with today had that concern and voiced that to me. Mary Lynn, do you want to add to that as well?
I think it's safe to say that the teachers of the special needs students acknowledge that they are the neediest of our population and need to be in school. But our teachers are also struggling with the fact of their safety and the concern and the unknowns and the risks. So they are scared, and I have had several conversations with teachers in the intensive program and the SOUL program who are very worried about their safety and the students' safety if we come back to school in person. It's a very tough situation.
And I think there's an opportunity to have conversations to see if after the school year starts, to see if there is something once we're in remote and that we can do that we need to provide education for some of those people that isn't remote. But I don't know right now what that might look like. But I think the DCTA is open to at least listening to suggestions and ideas from our members as well as the administration team.
Yes, I would like to see step 1 remote, and then step 2, then start talking about some of these special groups and how we can best meet their needs in a safe manner.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sam.
Sure. I just wanted to express my concerns as well. We recently had an email that came from the health department that spoke about the concern for adequate testing and inconsistent response times. In my own experience, I did just have a COVID test actually yesterday and was able to get one of the 150 tests available this week at physicians' immediate care. It did only take 20 minutes to get the result. It costs $260 if you do not have adequate insurance. CVS also does testing in town. They do not test under 18, and their test takes up to over a week. I have 5 coworkers that recently have had to be tested, and it ranges from 2 days to 4 days to 5 days to 10 plus days for results to come back. With those testing results taking, with it being so inconsistent, there's really no way then to do real contact tracing and making sure that you're quarantining for the right amount of time. I also think that there's inadequate testing. Like I said, there's 150 rapid tests available this week only, and you had to get to physicians' immediate care before they ran out. Priority is given to healthcare workers. So I was number 46 out of 50 for yesterday. If 4 healthcare workers had walked up, I would not have been tested, and I wouldn't have been able then to have a negative test. I would have been left in the dark. And so that is a big concern. I don't think until we have adequate testing that we can really expect to provide a safe environment where that contact tracing can really be done. Second, the latest data that is from the U.S., it's not from small, homogenous socialist countries that have had coordinated and aligned responses from the beginning of the virus. It's from our own United States. Since our last meeting, there was a summer camp, or there were 2 schools in Indiana that have had to close since starting because there were positive cases. There were 260 teachers in Georgia that tested positive after they had in-person planning. There was a summer camp in Georgia that had 260 out of 344 tests that were available that were positive. That's a 76% positive rate. There was a 51% attack rate for children 6 to 10 years old at that camp. And 26% of those that were tested that tested positive were asymptomatic. The report is from the CDC, and it says, I'll quote, it says, asymptomatic infection was common and potentially contributed to undetected transmission, as has been previously reported. This investigation adds to the body of evidence demonstrating that children of all ages are susceptible to COVID-19 infection, and contrary to early reports, might play an important role in transmission, end quote. It is my opinion that we have a great return to in-person learning plan for when it is safe to do so, and I would suggest we start fully remote learning with the idea that we will monitor it closely, as has been asked, and maybe even by first quarter have a plan for, returning in person to some extent. But until we have adequate testing in our county, in our community, there's no way that we can do this safely.
Thank you, Samantha. Jeremy?
Sure. It's interesting that we tend to focus on cases a lot, and the reality is that you're not going to stop this virus. It's going to infect 40 to 60% of the population, and you're not going to slow down that. You're going to slow it down. It's not going to stop it. Right? I mean, every epidemiologist in the world will tell you the same thing. Sorry, am I not talking loud enough? So, we're in an interesting conundrum here because I think that there is no electronic way to achieve education in a fair and equitable way. I think that we're at like 70% free and reduced lunch. Poverty is an issue. Probably half of our students in some of our schools are single-parent families with no one home all day, and they're now expected to sit in front of a computer with no one to reinforce it. There's no teacher live streaming, talking to them. It's just we're leaving them all behind, and I'm 100% confident the state of Illinois will come in at the end and just do a pass fail and pass everyone, just like they did before. So we can say that this is going to be real and it's going to be graded, but we can't because it's not equitable. It just isn't. There's no way to create equity here. The children who are advantaged financially are going to fare better than the kids who are not, and there's not a darn thing we're going to do to stop it in this particular case. So then it comes down to, okay, should we be doing it or should we not? And I don't think anybody's ever going to say that children don't transmit the disease. Of course, everyone does because they get it. The question is, are you going to die from it, right? I mean, that's the big question. And, obviously thus far in Illinois, I don't think there's 4 people under the age of 50 that have perished because of it, and all had pre-existing conditions from my understanding. So is it likely? No, it's not. Is it possible? Sure. But I would also mention that I know children in this district who have passed away from other viruses every year, right? We do lose people because of it. So now you're left with, and I know I'm free-flowing in my thought of consciousness here after listening to everybody. Do we really think that this is going to end at the end of the first semester, second semester? I mean, every epidemiologist in the world has said this is going to go around just like the flu every single year. So now we're putting the brakes on it. We're not allowing anybody to get it. And we're keeping everybody separated, right? So we're slowing the spread. So that will keep us at home and it will keep us even. And I don't think we'll ever get 100% of anybody to say it's a good time to go back to school. I just don't think it'll happen. We have 60% of parents right now who want to send their kids back to school, 40 that don't, 70% of teachers that aren't feeling safe coming back to school. So I feel like we're kind of stuck in this cyclical argument of, is it safe or isn't it? And what are the real facts? And, unfortunately, we're stuck here trying to make a decision. And I don't think that getting back to school is going to, I think it's going to create a wave of cases. I believe it would. I believe people are going to get sick and they're going to go home, just like we do now. We get hundreds of kids leaving every day from the flu season. It'll happen. But will people perish? I don't think so. I really don't. I think some people will get sicker than others, just like you did, obviously. And that was unfortunate. But it happens with other diseases as well all the time. So the question is, at what point do we as a board decide, hey, it's safe now? And I don't know that will happen if we continue on this trajectory. I think we'll just continue to put it off inevitably. And how long can these children at home by themselves sustain that? I just think at this point, I drive around this town, and I know I'm pontificating here, and I apologize, but I see every store's parking lot jammed full. I can't even get through the line at Kohl's. People are everywhere. right? All the time in this town, thousands of them. And yet we have healthcare workers with, 22 deaths in our nursing home? Not one healthcare worker, right? None of them has died. And they're around it every day, all day. So I guess the question is, I believe that it's already a predetermined conclusion. We're probably going to start remotely. But I would ask everybody to really think about that, because it's going to get harder and harder and harder to reverse course. And eventually everything will be at home learning. And will we ever get our teachers back in the classroom? And that's a real concern to me. So I am not unsympathetic. I have children. They're going to be going off to college, and they're actually going to be in person all semester. And I'm going to sure have to worry about whether or not they're going to get sick. But at the end of the day, it's really the best way to educate. So I'll get off my soapbox now, and I'll say that, we can't teach without teachers, and so I will support remote learning, but I would encourage everyone to take deep thoughts about how we're going to get back.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Victoria?
I want to share some of my concerns also. I agree with Jeremy. I think it's we need to start the year with remote learning. We're going to have to start the year with remote learning. I think that's our safest bet. But we also have to be thinking about getting the teachers back into the building, and how do we do that? And how do we make them feel comfortable? And I think it's important that we work through the remote learning, that we are also having teachers communicate with our students often, daily. So I think we just need to have both pieces. I agree with Jeremy, what you said, and again, my kids are anxious to get back into school and learn and get through sports and then get back to their friends. So I think it's important that we do the remote learning, but we also are looking forward to getting the teachers back in the classroom and getting our kids back.
Thank you, Victoria. I would say that we are feeling the weight of the world on our shoulders right now as school board members to make these decisions. These decisions are agonizing, and we know that any decision that we make will hurt children. Not coming into schools, having school remotely, obviously that's going to impact our families. That's going to impact their abilities to make an income. That's going to impact our children's educations in ways that we will have yet to see what that will look like in the future. And we also know that the CDC said this week that we're expected to have 11,000 Americans a week die of coronavirus in August. And Dr. Birx, who was backed up by Dr. Fauci, said that the virus has is in a new phase where it's permeated rural areas as well as cities, and that they're even making recommendations in areas where there's outbreaks that multi-generational families wear face masks at home. So to send our kids into schools and to send our teachers into schools without adequate testing, and not being able to assure 100% their safety just doesn't seem to be worth the risk that we would be taking. So I would also agree that we should go to remote learning to start. I do think it's extremely important that we get our children, our special education students back in the classrooms as soon as possible, as soon as we can safely do that. I think it's really important. And I appreciate DCTA for, bringing that up and talking about that. And how can we make sure that we're servicing our students that, need us in person the most? I talked to my son tonight who's 14, and I said, what do you think if we go remote? And he started to cry because he said, I can't learn that way. But we know that, we have to make this hard choice, and it will be hard for our families, and it will hurt our kids. But bringing this virus home to families will potentially devastate our families and our kids. So I would say a recommendation would be to go to remote learning to start, and I would ask if we have a consensus for that.
I would like
Val has something else to say.
Before we do consensus, I'd like to.
Sure, we're not, Val's, oh, you're doing Val for consensus, Tammy? Val's got a comment.
Go ahead, Val.
Hello.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay. To finish, I was able to slightly hear Jeremy, but I heard Victoria and she agreed with what Jeremy said, so I'm gonna piggyback a little bit. Sarah, your comments were spot on, and I think we share that same sentiment. Victoria, you're absolutely right. I think it's important for us, if we're going to move remotely, for us to get to the point where we're collaborating with teachers. Reading West Aurora plans and other districts, but West Aurora specifically was very specific, and it said that for those students who are special ed or high risk, they are going to start having conversations with the union, or the agreement with the union has already been established, that they will be, servicing those students in some capacity in person, beginning in September after Labor Day has passed. So I agree, Victoria, it's important for us to get teachers to a level of feeling comfortable, but also where we're also reaching those students that, like Jeremy mentioned earlier, that don't have the access, don't have the means to really engage in the e-learning, remote learning component. So, that's the only thing that I would really ask our union. We are being extremely flexible, and I think all of us are agreeing, to the idea of remote and starting remote. I would just, implore the board or the union to really consider looking at ways to service our students who are at risk or special ed. And that's all I would like to end with.
Thank you, Val. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Actually, I had a question for Ben. Would you mind starting up here? Obviously, Ben, your role is going to be pretty vital here, I think. My biggest question is, if you had sort of had discussions about a scenario where teachers might be able to be in their classroom and on their whiteboard, or they'll be able to see faces staring back at them.
Synchronous learning, yes.
Thank you. Do we currently possess the capability to do that in all of our classrooms?
We do with a series of devices, so the teacher could basically use either the all-in-one in their classroom if they're a K-8 teacher, or their laptop if they're a high school teacher, as the primary device to go and display the curriculum onto the smartboard, and then use a second device like the Chromebook that they also have to then work with the students through a Google Meet, or potentially have an assistant that's help them out in the classroom to sort of moderate some of those meets as well as present it.
Would there still be that big delay, though?
Would there still
be that huge delay like we're experiencing with?
No, that delay is through YouTube.
Okay.
So we have no control over.
Okay, because I never experienced that with Zoom. Okay, so kids could then theoretically be watched by the teacher while they're watching her Zoom, and they could push a button to ask a question, right, or something like that.
Yep, they can raise their hand, and then the teacher can use them.
Okay, that was a question. Now, if I might, and I don't know does anybody else have any other questions technologically wise for Ben? Because I have another question for our superintendent.
Oh, I just wanted, Ben, I know you sent it out in the board memo. I just wanted to double check. So we are still getting all of the devices that we thought we were. There was potentially going to be a delay, but now there is not.
Yes, we've worked with our vendor, and they are going to make us whole. All of the devices are stateside in Minnesota, going through production, and should be shipped out in the next week or two. Is our understanding, barring any sort of unforeseen circumstances. So.
And we'll have sufficient devices then for K through 12 for each student.
That is correct.
as well as available hotspots for internet if needed at home.
That is also correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.
So,
Ben, could you stay there for a second, please? Hey, everybody. I want to give you the genesis of my concern, or at least one of the many aspects of my concern. Ben and I talked before the meeting about getting children that have special needs. In other words, there are children that have certain circumstances that we need to really reach out to. Now, when school is going on and teachers are teaching in the classroom and students are coming to the classroom, that reach out is unnecessary. That is to say, the reach out is already there. It's being done by bringing the student in front of the teacher. Ben went to great lengths to deal with a problem with students that do not have Wi-Fi, that did not have a availability or Wi-Fi availability to them. And we had a hotspot. We did 200. We identified students at need, with needs, special particular needs that needed to have Wi-Fi. Went to great lengths. I'm paraphrasing. Jump in at any time, Ben. But went to great lengths to identify these students, 200 of them, and only 20 out of that 200 availed themselves of this technology that allowed them to use a hotspot provided by the various providers here in town, right? I mean,
Yeah, they were Verizon hotspots, and yes, we still have a stash of those. And again, if families are having issues with internet connectivity at their home, just as what was sent out through prior communications, they can email the number one, TO, the number one, at b428.org, and we will assist them in procuring a hotspot for the start of the school year. And again, we've been tiering these requests based upon the reduced status first. Obviously, the student has to be enrolled in the district. And then we'll look at the other requests as we get them in, because we are foreseeing that there will be an uptick in probably families needing to have adequate internet access, especially with the decisions that are occurring right now.
right. So again, sorry for jumping in here, but this is a bit of technology. It's a nice, really light, lovely little piece of technology that allows them to connect to the internet. Only 20 out of 200 availed themselves after being identified, after being, I think, they were communicated with. I mean, was that something that we actually communicated with those people about their need?
There were emails and phone calls both from the district office as well as from the building administration.
Great. So everyone, I just want you to understand my concern. 20 out of 200, after a great deal of effort was involved in getting them involved into this particular process. And what I'm saying is, there is no substitute for being in front of that student as a teacher. And for as much as we may talk about it and say, oh, by golly, this is going to work, there is an example of it not working. 10% of that group, after being communicated with, availed themselves of the ability to get online and participate. So I'm just saying, good intentions and the road to hell, right? I mean, there is a process that has been refined over many decades and hundreds of years of face-to-face teaching. And this process of remote has been refined over the process of a week and a half. Sorry. But, a little bit more than a week and a half, but not much. And here is a glitch in that particular process. I am just saying, as much as we may start remotely, we need to work very, very diligently about getting this process back to where it works. Sorry for my rant.
I appreciate your sentiment, Jeff, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that this is exactly what we're trying to say. Is this will hurt our children without a doubt, and it's a very hard decision, and it's just weighing, cost versus benefit, and there really is no good solution that is. Yes. Yep. So go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, I just wanted to follow up with the other question.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ben. I'm not promising that there won't be more questions. So. The other piece of this is that we have on the agenda a couple ticks ahead, a curriculum software, and I've seen some feedback from some people.
We're not going to approve it.
What's that?
If we go remote, we won't approve it.
Oh.
Yeah.
When we get there, I'm going to explain why we're not asking you to approve it tonight. It's next.
Good. So that was another question I don't have to ask then. So I guess at the end of the day, can you just maybe, Ray, if you wouldn't mind, speak very thoroughly about what a parent at home who's leaving for the day with their child sitting in front of a Chromebook can expect to happen for their child that day? Okay.
So I think the big part we're going to have to educate our families really fast, because we're down to, 10 days, is that what we did in the spring will be different than what we will do in the fall. The expectations from the state has changed. We are to have 2.5 hours a day synchronized or in-person teaching with our students. That wasn't an expectation in the spring. We are to have 5 hours, including that, total instruction, whether that's some time with the students and then, of course, assignments and things that they're working on. So that's going to be the big change that we'll be making from spring to fall. And when we look at the parent survey we gave to parents, they were asking for more face-to-face time with teachers. And teachers were gaining more confidence because that was a whole new thing to us. So that's going to be the big difference between spring and then what we're going into for fall, doing e-learning.
You said 2.5 hours. Is that going to be the same for high school kids? Because I would think they would be much more capable than 2.5 hours.
Yeah, well, they're saying at least 2.5 hours. Tomorrow is our planning time to work this all out. We have some tentative ideas that the building leadership team worked on. And I would say we're around 3 hours a day in person live teaching, and then another time in the afternoon where the students are able to log back in with their teacher to ask questions or work in small groups. Because as we have found out, one meeting after another meeting, it is unbelievably draining to be on a computer with, you can't go all day long. I mean, adults, we're struggling. We know our students will. So, and that doesn't mean we couldn't increase the time as we go, but they suggest we start at that minimum in the beginning of the year, and even maybe a little less for our little people.
So are we going to send out a very detailed explanation? Because here's what in everything I've read from parents and heard in conversation, the concern is always we just don't understand what the expectation is going to be for us. And I don't know that we've really done
So in the last spring, we had a parent handbook and we had a staff handbook. And in the parent handbook, it told exactly what we were doing, how we were going to grade, how attendance would be taken. So the hope is in the next 3 to 5 days to develop that same kind of document, get it translated, but it'll of course be fluid. But yes, we're going to do the exact same thing. And I think we talked today, we haven't talked to Ben yet, but just to have a website page strictly signed to this so that there's just one spot parents always go.
I just, we're about to vote on the plan here, and I don't know that the details of the day-to-day are really clear yet to us guys.
No, because we've changed the direction a little bit, but we've had some preliminary meetings knowing that maybe in the fall later this would happen. So we've kind of got an idea, and tomorrow a team of teachers, administrators are all coming together to work on this all afternoon.
Can I complicate things a little bit? Is it possible to incorporate a video on the website? So, put it in print. People may or may not read it. But if you just put it in video, you hit the final points, that might be a good way to get that information out and get people on the same page quickly.
Yeah, we had that suggestion made, and I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So does anyone have any other questions or comments about this? No? Okay, so we just need consensus to go ahead and move forward with remote learning to start the semester. Is there consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So that's 5. And then Val, she already said yes, so we'll go ahead. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward. I'd just like to thank Cabinet too for all the work that you've done and all the planning, and I know it's been very intense, and I also appreciate DCTA and the angst and everything that we've all been going through. We've been doing it together, so we need to just move forward together and do what's best for kids.
Great. I want to do some closing statements on this topic. Great. So given your guidance, we'll move forward with remote learning. At the same time, we'll take the foundation that we already developed in our blended model and collaborate to make our next step improvements. These revisions need to include a staged reentry process. As part of the first stage, we need to make students with special needs and at-risk and disadvantaged children a priority for reentry. As requested from teachers, our goal is to begin that conversation tomorrow. The overall reentry plan will assure that we do not lose sight of our bigger picture, which is to get everyone back to school safely. And finally, I want to thank everyone for your patience as we step into these unprecedented times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, for leading us. So we'll go ahead and move forward to our next item, which is thermal temperature scanners.
Yes, as part of our return to school, thermal scanners were an important part of that reentry plan. Given a short-term pause in our return to school, we definitely won't need them right away. However, we will likely need them in several weeks. We're hoping to seek approval for this purchase, but we're not going to order the scanners until we actually know if and when we need them. Your approval is merely advanced planning and preparation, and that's our recommendation.
Okay, so it is recommended that the board go ahead and approve the thermal scanners. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses.
Yes. And then next is the curriculum software.
Yes, curriculum software was another important part of the original reentry plan. However, given remote learning, we definitely will not need this proposal. We no longer seek board approval, as we will be revising our software needs. So we're asking you to vote no.
Okay, so the recommended action is that the board not approve the curriculum software. Is there a motion?
Wait, we have to, should we read it this way so that we vote no rather than,
Yeah, I think we'll change that.
Okay. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of the curriculum software as presented. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Jeremy Olson,
No.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
No.
David Seymour,
No.
Jeff Hallgren,
No.
Samantha McDavid,
no.
Sarah Moses,
No.
Victoria Newport, no.
Okay. Next is the new business administration. The subject is a memo of understanding between CUSD 428 and the ELDC and the NIU Pre-K for All expansion program. Lisa Gorshals.
Hello. Kind of anticlimactic after everything, but this is a memo of understanding between the NIU expansion program. This is their second year in operation. And under the auspices of their grant as well as our grant, we need to have a partnership with community members. What this affords us to do is to provide a consultation an evaluation for students that might have greater needs than they're able to accommodate in their setting. And so then we provide consultation and evaluation for those students. And they're all DeKalb students, so they will be in our four walls at some point. So this is the bulk of what this memo of understanding does. And it provides a valuable partnership and helps serve all of our students. Question?
Yeah, I see a number here attached to that. Where does that money number come from? It's a block grant?
Yes. Yes, that is our pre-K for all block grant.
And that block grant is provided by whom?
The state.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
Thank you.
And from there, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Well, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call?
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Wilson.
Yep.